Some years ago, I was taking Men's Health magazine, and in it there was an article by a trainer in Arizona talking about the core development. And I read the article because I was interested in what he said. The small muscles of our core are what keep us balanced. They keep us from falling down. And I thought, okay, if that's prevention so I don't fall down, especially as I get older, that would be a really good thing. Anybody recognize that whole fall down problem and the consequences of that kind of thing? So I bought his book and I just went straight from a six-pack to a keg. I figured, you can actually party hardy with a keg more than you can a six-pack. So don't you get it? A six-pack is the abs, and a keg is what I've got. Okay, there you go. Now I see recognition in a few of you now. Some of you have joined me. Hi, Dave. The core, by definition, is the most important or basic part of something. I really like the word. I like what it communicates. It's found its way into the business community. Core value, belief that guides a firm's actions, unites its employees, and defines its brand. It's a way of connecting and understanding what is most basic and what is most important to us. And we here at NCC derive our passion, our vision, and our mission from this understanding of what God is like. So if we go back to the 1st of June, when I started this series, and we were using Luke chapter 15, which is one long story in 3 parts, answering the question, what is God like? Because Jesus has been challenged about that, and so he tells the story in 3 parts. And we're in the 3rd part, and we will finish it actually in 2 weeks. And here we have discovered things about God, and particularly in this last part, that are very encouraging, they're very comforting, they're very hopeful, but they're radical. They're really counterintuitive to what the culture would have thought of what God is like. For us, the messages going back to 3 weeks ago, where I talked about homecoming, and then last week was Abba. This week is restoration. All of these go to put together a package of the Father heart of God. And it shows for us, it kind of defines what our core is as NCC. And so they have, getting to teach this is one of those high water marks for me. I really enjoy this because it's what God has built into me and built into us as a church. So it's natural to us. It's native to us. It's what our culture is about. So today is part 8 of this summer series, Restoration. And this is really fun because Jesus is sharing this story and his listeners are dialed in and they've come to this most critical moment. The son, the younger son, who is dishonored, disrespected, shamed, embarrassed his father, has taken his share of the estate, his inheritance. He squandered it on wild living, prostitutes, etc. Distant country, ended up without anything, taking care of pigs, which if you're a good Jewish boy is the last thing you would be taken care of. So to be associated with pigs was another way of presenting just how far this young man had fallen. He had gone as deep down as you could go. He wakes up and realizes, nobody's giving me anything. Nobody's going to take care of me. The famine that has hit this country, I have no future here. But I could go home. My father might hire me. He might give me a job. What would he need from his father? He'd need mercy, wouldn't he? He would need forgiveness. He would need acceptance. He would need love from his father in order to be welcomed back and even given a job. So his only hope is getting mercy and getting a job. So he says, I'm going to go to my father and I'm going to ask him for these things. So he returns, and while he's a long way off, his father sees him. And we talked about that watchfulness of God, what God is like. He's like this father who's looking for his son. And because he sees him at distance, it implies that he's been watching for him. And he locks in and he sees him and he runs to him, he embraces him, and he kisses him. Now, if you're the son, what are you experiencing? Well, here's my take. If I'm directing this as a movie, the son's coming home. He's walking up towards the house. He sees his father. They have eye contact. The father runs to him. He drops to his knees. A place of humility, an expression that I'm destitute. This is my reality now. And it's interesting, just doing a casual Google image search of the number of artists that have depicted the return of the prodigal and the prodigal kneeling. This is Rembrandt. That's our copy, smaller. The original is 8x6. Which is huge. It's in St. Petersburg, Russia, at the Hermitage there. It's amazing. That was given to me by the church 30 years ago. Gosh, yeah, it's been 30 years now. One of my treasures. Certainly does not depict the time of Jesus. Rembrandt was Dutch, and so you get the Dutch flavor. But the son is what? He's kneeling. And that's the image that I have. He's in this dust of the street, the road, and he's kneeling. As his father runs to him, his father falls on his neck, embraces him, and kisses him. Has his father extended to him mercy? Certainly. You know, you can say words or you can do words. How much of communication is nonverbal? 85%. So you are communicating to me right now without saying a word. Those of you who are sleeping, I get it. Nobody this morning. I'm really proud of you. Me, so far anyway. We're doing good. No, we're all good. But 85%. So this father is communicating a huge message to the son. He's communicating love. He's communicating acceptance. He's communicating forgiveness. He's communicating these essential qualities of the heart of God to this son, who is worthy of what? Nothing. Did he deserve anything? And he says to his father, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Is that accurate? Absolutely. He realized the choices he had made and where he now come to, he could not ask for anything but mercy. And he asked for his father's mercy. His father extended to him, and then he asked for a job. I've sinned against heaven and against you, no longer worthy to be called your son. And then it goes on to say, make me like one of your hired men, which is basically say, would you give me a job? I need a job. Now, the father at this moment does something amazing. And I love this because, once again, the hearers, those who are listening to this, the audience, they're dialed in. The Father has done the unthinkable. The Son has done the unthinkable. The Father does the unthinkable. He responds to the unthinkable actions of the Son by doing the unthinkable as the Father. And that is extending to him this mercy. So the Son has asked for a job, but the Father said to his servants, okay, so this is fun. I want to have some fun with this. Sometimes you get things at 4 o'clock in the morning that are fun. And this is a 4 o'clock conversation about this sermon with God. So I'm going to push the text some, which means I'm going to interpret it. But I'm going to do so on what I believe was very legitimate of how the people who were listening, what they were hearing. So the Father said to his servants, one of the things we know about this home was it was a prosperous home. Servants, fields, flocks, fattened calf, et cetera, et cetera. Evidences that this home was a prosperous home. And so he says to his servants, now, if you're the Father, you are always attended by servants. And you have a chief servant who is your assistant, who's always present and always interpreting what you need and always making sure that you get everything that you want. That's their job. And so there's a chief servant here, and there's other servants. And like I said, if I were the person that was putting this together as a movie, I would have this little parade where the Father's running and all the servants are going, he's never run before. What's going on? Yeah. And they're trying to stay up with him. They see him fall on his son's neck, kissing him, embracing him, and they're going, this is huge. We've never seen this behavior in him before because it's never been called out before. And so it's like, wow. And he says to the servants, and I believe it's key to say to the chief servant, this is what I need. Quick. In other words, don't wait on this. I need this now. Bring the best robe and put it on him. Okay, so if you're the chief servant and the person you're serving says, bring me the best robe, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to go to the servant quarters and find the crummiest robe you can get because the kid doesn't deserve it. Right? No, you're going to do exactly what he says, aren't you? Even though you may not get it and may not understand it and may not want to do it, that's your job, is to give the Father what he wants. And he says, I want the best robe. Where are you going to find the best robe in the house? In the Father's room. Now, what's the best robe going to be? The one he wears on special occasions. Are you with me? Did he not say the best robe? So if you're the chief servant, you're interpreting this, you're going, da, 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 da. While I'm watching this incredible thing be poured out. He wants the best robe. I better get him the best robe. So he talks to the other servant who's going to go get the best robe. Go to the Father's room and get the robe that he only wears on special occasions and bring that robe right now. And that servant would be going, eyes about that big. What? Go get his ceremonial robe? go get the best robe in the whole house and he's going to put it on that? You got to be kidding. But that's not their job, is it? Their job is just to get that best robe and get it here and get it on him. Okay, are you working with me now? Are you all right about this? This is pretty crazy. This is actually scandalous that this father would be this generous. And then he says, put a ring on his finger. Now, I like this. Because if you're the chief servant, you're going to send one of the other servants and just say, look, we got an old box of rings around. Just go find one of those and bring it here. The kid doesn't deserve anything better than that. Just bring me a ring. Would that be what he said? If he wants the best robe, what does he want? He wants the best ring. What's everybody hearing? This is a unique event, and I'm going to pour out the best that we have. So he would send a servant into the father's quarters and say, get the ceremonial signet ring that goes with the robe and bring it. And they're going, what? That's the best ring with the best robe. And the same thing with the sandals. What sandals are you going to get? You tell one of the servants, take your sandals off right now and give it to him. No, you go get the best sandals. What sandals are those? Those are the sandals that the father wears ceremonially in special events. They're the finest. They're the best. So you see where I'm interpreting this and why? This is Jesus communicating how lavish the Father is, how his love is so generous and so beyond measure. It's huge. Now, I admit, I'm taking some liberty here by adding in a couple of things, but not much. Because if we put ourselves in the place of the servants, I think we get here very simply. But I think we get another clear picture of what Jesus intended to be heard. In Hebrews 1-3, we're told that Jesus, the Son, reflects the glory of God and shows exactly what God is like. So here's Jesus telling a story of what God is like. Who is Jesus? He's the Son of God. So he's telling them a story of what he's like, right? So he's saying, I do this, and you're watching me be generous to sinners, and you're being critical of me, but I'm doing exactly what my Father is telling me to do and is what is showing me to do. I'm doing that. And so in John chapter 14, Jesus would say this, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. I love this picture. Here's Jesus talking about what God is like. He's like this Father, and his heavenly Father is like this Father, and who's like that? Jesus. Jesus is like that. So we have a complete picture here, what God is like, what Jesus is like. This Father, in his behavior, explains God's value, his priority, and the importance he puts on mercy and grace. And Jesus embodies that. So if we want to talk about the Father heart of God and it being core, the core of the Father heart of God is who? It's Jesus. It's Jesus. So we take Jesus and we extrapolate out, and everything that begins and everything that ends with Jesus explains God. Helps us to understand and know who God is. And we live in that picture. As we talked last week, God has put us in the picture between Abba and the beloved, the Father who looks at the Son and says, "You are my beloved Son," and the Son who looks at the Father and says, "Abba." We're right there in that picture. God has put us into that picture. So the things that are happening, the Father is ordering to have happen for this young man have happened to us. By our faith in Christ, we have been shown this mercy and grace. And what we get to do for the rest of our life here is represent the Father's heart in extending this same mercy and grace to everybody that we meet. Without vetting them, without just pouring it out the way Jesus did. We get to do that. We don't have to look at them and qualify them. We don't have to look at anybody and say, "Gee, I don't know if you deserve this." Of course they don't deserve it. Nobody deserves it. Nobody's worthy of it. It's strictly a gift. It's a mercy gift of God. Well, one of our favorite verses and passages is in Ephesians chapter 1, in that very first part, where the Apostle Paul is talking to the church at Ephesus, and he's giving an explanation of Jesus and the grace that we have been given in him. Grace meaning a free gift. And he describes this gift with these 4 words. This gift is glorious. So think the young man in the road on his knees getting the best robe. What's the most glorious robe in the house? The best robe. What's the most glorious ring? The best ring. What's the most glorious sandals? The best sandals. And so it's a picture of what is by far the best. But because it's the best, it's impossibly expensive. It's not, you could not even begin to afford it. And so God says, "I give it to you freely." It's not cheap, but it's free. That can be very offensive to our pride, because we certainly want to feel like we have earned it, we deserve it, and we can somehow repay it, to preserve our pride and our dignity, when in reality, we don't deserve it. We never did. We can't earn it, and we'll never be able to repay it. So it's glorious, it's free, it's rich. I love the word rich. It means more than enough. Isn't that fun? You remember one time when you had more than enough? Fall's coming, I'll have more than enough maple leaves. In spring, my maple tree shares with our neighbors so that they could have a maple tree. And my maple tree has mothered many maple trees in our neighborhood. Okay, there we go. But in the fall, my grass is totally covered with maple leaves. It's more than enough. Rich. Now, for most of us, it's not that we're stingy. We just don't want to be excessive. We just don't want to do more than what should be done. Now, come on. If 5 is enough, we'll do 4. We don't want somebody to think that they can get something for nothing. Right? So we measured out We think, okay, what would happen if instead of exactly what was needed, you doubled it? Then you gave that. What would that do inside you? They don't earn it. They didn't deserve it. You can't do that. You're going to ruin them. They're going to think money grows on trees. They're going to think, You know what they're going to think? You're crazy. What did you do that for? They just experienced grace, and you delivered it because you did something unreasonable. And that's what grace is. And God does that. And he loves to do it. It's a crazy thing he does. Haven't you had it happen to you? Sure you have. And we get to be part of that. That's part of God's generosity. And it's lavished on us. Now, the word lavish actually is scandalous. It's a scandal. It's totally inappropriate, according to normal mores, for God to be this generous. It's not right. How are we doing? You've heard this sermon before, haven't you? Some of you are going, oh man, he's at it again. IR. Love to teach on this stuff. This is so fun. But this is our core. This is where we live. This is what we get to do. This is what God has put in the depths of our soul and our heart. It's our passion. It's our identity. It's our what we value, our values, our convictions, the things that are important to us, the things we believe are true. This is the core that we get to live out of while we live the days between now and heaven. This is what we get to do. Because when we get to heaven, what's heaven going to be like? Will heaven be more than enough? Boy, you better believe it. I think the reason we are going to spend eternity there is it will take eternity to unpack all of the goodness of God that waits for us in heaven and all of the love that God has for us. It will take every day of eternity, and it will be new every day because he's infinite. Boring? Not on your life. Nobody's going to be bored. Might be some other things, but yeah, I think we're going to be in total awe constantly. We're just going to go, wow. And we're going to get to tell our stories. And then there are others who are going to get to tell their story. And we're going to sit around telling our stories because now we're going to see exactly that grace and that mercy and how God loved us and how he was there for us and the ways that we missed it and the ways that we didn't and how wonderful it was and those times when we got to be like that. Now the worship team come back up. One of the friends from the early days of the church was Dick Montgomery. And Dick and Dixie had 4 children. And their oldest child, they had a little farm out in Duval. She fell out of the loft of the barn and was killed. It really changed their lives. Out of that, they became very aware of adopting children. And they would adopt special needs children. Eventually, they would go to Haiti and work in an orphanage there. They were really wonderful people. And Dick was one of these wiry, he wasn't very tall, but he was a painter, a house painter. And I had him paint our house. And we have a second 2-story, well, it's a split level, but it's at ground level 2-story. So he's off on the north end, which pitches all the way up 3 stories. And he's on a ladder all the way up into the pitch. And he wants to get from where he is over to here. So he bounces the ladder, pop, 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 over. And I'm going, there's asphalt concrete beneath you, Dick. Woohoo! Hey, you up there. Guy was a monkey. He was crazy. Well, he would bring his son on jobs with him. And one time, his son questioned him. He says, Dad, he says, you always do more than what the contract calls for. You always do more. You always add another half day or day of work. Why do you do that? And he said, I just want to bless them. Now, some of you are having a catatonic fit right now because, inside you, there's that thing of, they paid for this, that's what they're going to get kind of idea. What would it be like to live our lives where what is expected is just a beginning point? What would it be like that if this is the norm, we get to do this? What would that be like for us in so many different ways? The generosity of forgiveness and acceptance, and with whatever we have, finances, etc. And I love that about Dick. And his son loved telling the story. It was one of those things about his dad that he loved. Now, did it cost Dick to do that? Sure did. He could have been on another job. Spent a half a day, sometimes a day, just blessing the people, just giving them a gift, because he wanted to bless them. Love that. Is that like anybody we know? Is that like Jesus? Is that like the Father? Is that like what's really inside of us? So often we have such a tight grip on everything about our life that the joy of just giving it away freely is, out of fear. And God is so open-handed and so generous. It's just, what a gift. What a blessing. So there you go. What do you think? Father, heart of God. That's our culture. That's what we're about. Next week, Jim House is going to finish his 2-week series on why are we here, and next week it will be the answer. The following week, I'm going to finish my summer series on what God is like, and it will be, who knows? That's why the question mark's up there. No, it isn't. It's going to be about the older son, but there's so much we don't know. It's left open-ended. So that's why I put the question mark up there. The following Sunday, September 2nd, I'll start a fall series, and it will be entitled, What Does God Want for Us? And I'm going to start with the topic life. And that'll be September 2nd, and that'll take us on through up to Christmas.